I am Cynthia Lobo. I am 55 years old. I have been practicing law for 31 of those years. I was raised in the Midwest, born in Chicago, raised in Wisconsin. I am one of 7 children, born to my parents, obviously, Miguel and Caridad Wimmer. They were from Mexico. My parents immigrated to the United States, and my brothers and sisters and I were all raised in a bilingual, multicultural home. I was the first one in 1973 when I graduated high school to go on to college. I put myself through college, and then I pursued a career in law, also putting myself through law school. I began my profession, my practice as an attorney at the age of 25 in the Milwaukee Public Defender Office, where I was defending indigent persons accused of crime. I continued that practice for 4 years, and I was a bit of a novelty then because I did speak Spanish. I am bilingual, and it was an opportunity for the community, the Spanish-speaking community, that needed to be helped by an attorney to have someone like me there. I think they appreciated it. I know certainly my life was enriched by being able to reach out to a whole group of people, including the Hispanic community. I continued practicing law when I was invited, and when at the young, tender age of 29, to come to Washington, D.C. to teach. I did go to Washington, and I was a practicing attorney there for a number of years, in addition to being invited to teach as an adjunct professor of law at the Georgetown University and with the consortium of universities. And teaching included also assisting young people who were coming through the law school to practice law in the criminal system as well there, in misdemeanor cases, serving an indigent community again. I had a great time teaching my students. I had always told them you had to be the kind of lawyer that you wanted to sit next to you in a court of law. And in addition to teaching my students, I started the DC Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys, and I continue here in New York to teach as a moot court judge, not actively every day in teaching, but I continue to teach young people in law by offering my services as a moot court judge. I have been practicing in New York since 1999. I'm an active practitioner in the court in the city of New Rochelle. I have extensive experience in criminal law. I've handled cases from traffic cases all the way to capital cases. I have written appellate experience as well. I also have involved myself in the community since I got to this community in New Rochelle back in the early 2000s. I am currently president of the Chamber of Commerce, so I do try to help people in this community as well with businesses and concerns as much as I can. I have served 2 terms as president of the Lions Club of New Rochelle. I'm very proud of the work the Lions Club does around the world. We are the largest nonprofit service organization. We serve our communities all around the world. I've also worked with the Salvation Army here, and I continue to make community service a matter of first priority. And community service, not lip service, is what I believe in, and I offer my candidacy enthusiastically, with great love for this community, and hopefully you will agree with me that I will be a step forward for this community and continue the excellence that New Rochelle has enjoyed on the bench. Thank you very much.
Right now we're going to take the questions from the Political Action Committee.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dorothy Oliver, and I would like to know, Mrs. Lobo, under what circumstances would you recuse yourself from a case?
If everybody could hear that, the question was under what circumstances would I recuse myself from a case? The law, I think, is very clear that a judge, and even an attorney not practicing as a judge, cannot undertake a case if an attorney has a conflict of interest. As a judge, the only cases I can see, foreseeable cases where I would have to recuse myself, which would mean step away and not hear the case, would be a case where I have a conflict of interest. That might include for a while, not taking cases where clients of mine are coming before the court again, because obviously there were things that I would know about which would could possibly, potentially weight the process unfairly. So other than that, I think only where there is a real conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest that a party raises and asks me about would I recuse myself on. Otherwise, there is no kind or type of case that I would believe that I would not be, certainly in no case I think I would be not competent to hear.
Next question.
My name is Jeffrey Charles, and I'd like to ask you, what qualities do you have that qualify you for city judge?
Oh, how many minutes?
Go
I'm gonna
ahead.
wait for him to do this. I don't want to, I tend to, the least fun part of campaigning has been having to learn to say I do this. It's not the way I was raised, it's not the way I feel, but I've had to learn how to say I can and I would and I have this to bring. That being said, what I believe I would bring to the bench, what makes me most qualified is, first of all, I do have 30 years of experience as a practicing attorney. I think anybody who's done anything for 30 years can feel confident that you know something about what you've been doing for the last 30 years. In that last 30 years, I've handled a number of criminal cases. I handle criminal cases now in this city court. I have worked in landlord-tenant in this city court. Small claims in this city court. I am a known quantity in this city court. So besides having my own experience, including in litigation and the teaching of law, and appellate practice, which means I know how to research, I know where to go find the answers. A good professor of mine told me in law school a long time ago that they hide all the answers in the books. I know how to hit the books, and I know how to hit them early, late, and often. So I'm no stranger to hard work. So I believe that my background as a practicing attorney, the length of time I've practiced, my ability to look into the law to find answers that I'm looking for, make me uniquely qualified in that way. The ability and the knowledge of the court and the community here, because I have been living here and actively involved with this community, also is another quality that I bring to the bench. And I do think it's very important for all of us, and especially I think the people in this room can appreciate the fact that when we are coming forward as a group of people or an individual from a demographic or a community, a place in the community where we have not been seen so much in police and fire and education, social work, that there is an opportunity and should be an opportunity for also the expanded group of Hispanics in this community as well, to see that there is also somebody from the community who is also in a position in the community that's an important position. I think the office of judge is an incredibly important position. As I said, non-political, incredibly important. It is about justice, not about creating law, but enforcing law fairly and justly, considering all of the people that are before the court.
Good evening, Ms. Lobo. My name is Joe Johnstone. I'd like to ask you, what are your views on the Citizen Complaint Review Board?
You know what, I have myself never filed a citizen complaint. I understand anecdotally, and so I can only answer this. I think it is incredibly important in any time that there is a governmental agency that is working, doing anything in the community, that citizens in the community have an opportunity to register complaints if they believe that something has been done unlawfully, unfairly, illegally, in a discriminatory fashion, anything of that nature. I have heard things pro and con the Citizens Complaint Review Board. I have heard some people say that they don't feel it's responsive. I heard some people say that they feel that they get some good results from it. I personally don't have any complaints that I have ever filed on them, but I do hear a number of complaints. That being said, I don't know if that's helpful, but I do feel that it's important for everybody to always be able to have a voice in government when you're dealing with governmental agencies.
How will you ensure that it's being heard, the complaint?
Well, the only thing no, I'm sorry, go ahead, you have more follow-up.
Right now, you make a complaint and it's not really addressed. There is no mechanism for it to be addressed.
Okay, Well, what I can say is this, in terms of what a judge can do, a judge cannot be proactive. A judge doesn't oversee, a judge doesn't decide what should come before a judge, anywhere. If there is if the process is used by anybody in the community to file a complaint because they believe they have an objection that must be addressed, if then the mechanism is pursued where a matter is brought before a judge, at that point the judge has to go by what the rules of law are, which is that there are the formalities of proper filing of a complaint. The other side is always entitled to be heard. That's the nature, that's the bread and butter, that's the way our adversarial system works. And then the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure apply. And I expect that both parties would have to meet, their burdens of evidence, and both parties should, under the rules of evidence, have an opportunity to fairly be heard. For me to say anything right now beyond that is something that I wouldn't do. One, because I don't have an opinion on any particular issue, and two, it is unethical for any judicial candidate to take a position on what we would do if a type of case came before us. All I would say is that every judicial candidate, every judge everywhere, not just here in our home court, but all the way to the United Supreme Court, has to follow the rules of law, the rules of evidence, and the rules of procedure. And if they feel they can't, they should, back to the question of recusal, get off the case. So as long as due process is observed and everybody gets a fair, that's what due process is about, a fair opportunity to be heard, and both sides or all sides do, that's the process. That is where judges have to step in and do the right thing.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the repeal of the Rockefeller drug laws?
Okay, here we go back to kind of the issue. I'm not going to dodge it but as I said before, I'm not permitted to talk about current cases, and I know current cases, pending cases, or how I would rule on any particular case. But what I can say about the Rockefeller drug laws, having been repealed, the extraordinarily draconian laws that were in place for so many years since 1973, a number of people have had, through the repeal of the laws, the opportunity to come back, seek resentencing. Newer people that are coming into the system are no longer facing the mandatory minimum penalties that were extraordinarily unfair and that were literally wiping out communities of people for nonviolent drug offenses. I think that the approach that has been taken by the legislature and the new focus on public health and safety, because this is what we're talking about primarily in nonviolent drug offenses, I think that approach is an appropriate approach. I think it's an approach that it makes sense intuitively that if someone is before the court because they have a drug problem, that should be considered. That is part of the job, I believe, of all judges everywhere, is to, as I say, do the right thing. Embrace the law, embrace the procedure, but make sure, if all we had to do was just, we wouldn't need judges if it was just so simple as a matter of mandatory minimums and this and that. The human element must be considered. That is why we have human beings sitting on the bench, which is why we have human beings in courts of law. So I am in favor always of treatment alternatives to people who are sick, and to people who are coming before the court, especially on nonviolent, possessory, and even small drug sale offenses. I can't say where I would go, what I would do in individual cases, I said, but I think that the legislature, having seen that this was the direction, chose wisely. I have been representing people for 31 years. Drug cases, homicide cases, robbery, burglary, you name it. Drugs have been involved a lot, and I have seen a disproportionate number of people in my life who are coming from the Black and the Latino community. In every place I've practiced. Now, it cannot be the case that Blacks and Latinos are more prone to violence, more prone to drug use and stuff, because statistically, as I understand it, not having done studies, but having read many things, that whites use and sell these quantities of drugs in the same rates as Blacks and Latinos, but I have always seen a disproportionate number in 31 years, and I've practiced in Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., and in New York, and I have always seen that imbalance in the numbers of people that are being arrested and incarcerated on those things. So I'm all in favor of real, true community treatment options and real, true consideration of factors like public health and safety for everybody involved.